Card King, here I come. Hello, sports fans, sports collectors, and all hobbyists. Welcome to the Card King Sports and Variety Show. I am your host, the Catman, Brian Cataquet, a.k.a. the Card King. We are live on ABC's KMET 1490 AM.com, your number one spot right here for news and talk on the West Coast. I thank everyone for tuning in this morning. Now, we are awaiting a call from a former player. On the telephone line, I welcome to the program three-time Major League Baseball All-Star catcher. We welcome in Johnny Edwards. Johnny, great to hear your voice today. How you doing?
We're doing fine, thank you. Brian, how are you?
Oh, everything's good. It's an honor to have you. And, Johnny, I want to begin. You played baseball for nearly 3 decades, or about 3 decades, and, being one of the finest catchers of your era. And I know the love of the game never leaves many. After all these years, Johnny, you still miss being a part of the game?
Yes, I still, we didn't get paid very much money, but I would do it again. It was a great experience, and I think, I played in the 60s and the 70s, and I think that was the golden age of baseball.
No doubt about it. And 59 was a big year. It was the year you signed with the Cincinnati Reds. My question to you, Johnny, how did the Reds hear about the great Johnny Edwards?
Well, at that time, I was going to Ohio State, and I went out to play semi-pro ball in the summer, and I think that was where they heard about me. I had played, 1 year at Ohio State.
Ohio State. So 59, you signed with the Reds, and it's striking. 2 years later, 1961, you're playing in the World Series against the New York Yankees.
That was one of my biggest thrills. There was more sports writers in the clubhouse than there were in all of Cincinnati.
I mean, that's amazing. And from what I'm reading, I'm looking at your statistics. You performed tremendously in that 61 World Series. You had a batting average of 364 in the series. So you really showed your chops. Now, how was it facing the great Whitey Ford? I know you faced him in Game 1 and I think in Game 4.
Yeah, I didn't face Whitey. I was in Game 2. In game 4, but they beat us 4-1. But it was a great experience for me. I joined the club in June of '61, and it was a change for me. But I was fortunate enough to go from there and build a pretty solid career from there, mostly on defense.
Oh, no question about it. Now, 61 to 64, tell me if I'm correct, Fred Hutchinson was your manager, right, with the Reds?
That's correct. And he was by far the best manager I ever played for. He really guided not only myself but all of the team. He was a guy that understood most of the players by their nationalities and handled them in such a way. He would handle, the Italians one way, the O'Toole's another way, and he knew that maybe in an English and Welsh background that I was always looking for, some praise. But he knew he didn't want to do that, and it made me work harder and harder and harder, trying to get his praise.
That was Fred Hutchinson. Now, what about some of your teammates during that time? Frank Robinson, Pete Rose. What can you tell us about those two icons?
Well, they were great baseball players, and I think Cincinnati made a huge mistake when they traded Frank. After a couple of years I'd been there, because he was a leader of our club, and of course Pete was Pete was Pete, and he was a great believer in Pete Rose, and he was going to survive no matter what. I was, disappointed when the charges came out for, later on for him. And in one of the old timers game, I said, Pete, go ahead and admit you gambled, but you never gambled against your team, and I firmly believe that. And but he never did, and if he would have, I think they'd have put him in the Hall of Fame.
Wow, so he didn't take advice from Johnny Edwards. Now, did he tell you at that time that he was denying it, or did he tell you at that time that he gambled? He was still denying it?
Yeah, he didn't talk about, he didn't deny it or didn't agree with it. Either way, when we were playing, he was quite a gambler in the horses and all that. I remember him going, and we'd play at that time in Milwaukee, and he'd take the train down to Chicago to the racetrack during the day, and then come back and play a night game.
Oh, really? Wow. And so Fred Hutchinson was 61 to 64, and then 65, if I'm not mistaken, Dick Sisler took over, right?
Yeah, Fred died of cancer, and
okay.
that was that was a sad time in my life.
So Dick Sisler takes over, and also Bristol, right? Wasn't Bristol your manager?
Bristol came in '66, I believe.
66, right. So any recollection on those two managers? Were they good baseball men, good baseball minds?
Well, they, Sisler was, kind of tried to take after Hutch a little bit, but he didn't have the skills that Hutch had. Bristol was, a hot-headed manager. And I had played for Dave in the minors the first year. He was a playing second baseman, and we got more fights that year than I can imagine.
Oh, is that right?
He loved the knockdown pitch, and one of the big fights we got in was with the Dodgers Farm Club in Reno, and Willie Davis was the first hitter, and he gave a sign to hit him, and he did. We ended up getting in a big fight later on.
And we're talking with three-time All-Star catcher Johnny Edwards, who's on the telephone line. Johnny, 63, 64, 65, you're playing on the All-Star team. I mean, that must have been a big thrill for you, huh? With all these athletes.
Yes, it was. And, of course, just before that, I had won the Golden Glove 2 years for defensive catcher, and it was at that time voted for by the players. And so that was a big honor for me for being voted the Gold Glove by the players. After that, the managers started voting for the Golden Glove, and they always couldn't get away from it, having some offense with your glove.
Oh, yeah. I mean, during the early 60s, 63, 64, 65, there was no one defensively better than Johnny Edwards behind the plate. I mean, in 63, there's a record. It was a record of all time. You put out like 1,008 putouts in 63, which was a record at that time in baseball. So, and you were a master at scooping the ball from the dirt and had a cannon of an arm from the scouting report. How did you train to be a catcher?
Well, I always wanted to be a catcher, and I never played another position. Even in at Ohio State, they had me catching the first game. In the second game, I'd play right field, and I was scared to death. I'd make a mistake out there. But I had some good, people that were training me. One of the guys was Jim Turner, who was a pitching coach. But he was my manager in Nashville, and he used to work on me with a tennis ball and blocking the balls and all that stuff. And I had some good people. Cottville in Indianapolis work with me on my catching skills, and so I was lucky to have some good people.
Yeah, and you know what's amazing? I'm looking at some of your career statistics. In '69, you also put out 1,135 baseball runners or baseball putouts behind the plate, 1,135, and this was in '69. Then in '70 and '71, later on in your career, you go and you have errorless games. I think 138 errorless games. This was a record at the time. So from '64, when you win the Gold Glove, to '70 and '71, still setting records behind the plate. I mean, your talent really behind the plate never diminished.
Well, Brian, I don't know if you realized it or not. I made a big mistake in 1966 the beginning of the year. What I did was at the last game as we headed north out of spring training, I fractured my finger on my throwing hand. And at that time, I wanted to play. And so I played 5 days later with a splint on my finger and the splint when I was hitting with a bat. And I don't know if you realize how hard that is. I could have got it fixed. Even today, when I show people my throwing hand, I got about a 30-degree angle.
Oh, wow.
That thing. So that really hurt me. If you look at my stats in '66, they really diminished. I had a good year in '65. '66 was terrible. '67 was just a mediocre year, but then Bench came along with Cincinnati. I was traded to St. Louis, and that was when I started turning it around again.
Right, that's a good point. So '68, you're playing with the Cardinals, and that's under Red Shandies, right? He was the manager.
That's right. And Red wanted to keep his catcher strong, and I had I was a good throwing catcher. And so I got to catch Gibson a lot, and he had that 1.12 earned run average. And I would catch when we were playing against speed teams, and then I caught Washburn every game. And, of course, he had a no-hitter that year. But Gibson was a fabulous pitcher and had a great year that year. A sports writer told me to figure out that when I was catching him, he had a .086 earned run average.
Wow. So now what was Gibson's favorite pitch? Did he choose his pitches by himself, or did you make that decision occasionally for him?
I made that decision for him many times.
Really?
He had a great fastball, but he also had an excellent slider. And I tried and kept trying, and I did convince him that when he got behind, to not always throw that fastball. Let's throw a slider. And, everybody on the bench is always watching. You got 0-2, and if somebody throws a slider to you, I can't look for a fastball. So I made him throw that quite a bit. He was a stubborn son of a gun. He'd call me out to the mound once in a while and say, "God damn it, I'm pitching this game. Let me pitch it." And I said, okay.
Wow, but you also caught, Steve Carlton was on the '68 Cardinals, right? A young Steve Carlton.
Yeah, McCarver caught Carlton.
Oh, that's right, McCarver. That's right.
McCarver caught them, and I caught Gibson most of the time, and Washburn all of the time. And I was a little disappointed. Of course, in baseball, you go along with the team, but I did not I always wondered why. Well, I found out after the last game. Red called me in and said, "You'd been traded before the series started to Houston." So I didn't play.
Oh my God! So, but speaking about these pictures, we can't forget you also caught in '65 Jim Maloney's near no hitter, right? It went into 10 innings.
Yes, I caught. He threw 186 pitches that game. He was wilder than a church mouse. He walked 11, thrown the ball all over the place, and I was goddamn scared to death I was gonna, let a run in on that one. But we finally won that one ball game, and he was still throwing hard after 180 pitches.
Man, so now 69 to 74, as you mentioned, you're with the Astros. You end your career with the Astros, and
right.
Harry Walker was the manager. Did you get along with Harry Walker?
Harry didn't have very good managerial skills. He was, I guess a pretty good hitter when he was playing, but he'd slap the ball to, the opposite field. And we had guys. He was a good Southern boy that had trouble with the black ball players, and we had some great ones. We had Morgan, we had Wynn, we had Mayberry, and he tried to change them to being slap hitters. And hell, they weren't slap hitters; they were good hitters that could pull the ball and hit home runs, and that led to a whole bunch of friction in our clubhouse.
Wow, and then 73 or 74, I believe, Leo Durocher comes in, right?
Right. And
how was Leo the Lip?
Leo the Lip was past his time. He never traveled with us on the plane or anything else. And he never showed up at the ballpark until game time. So Preston Gomez would make out the lineup and then hope that it didn't change when he showed up. And I was surprised we had an outfielder by the name of Cedeno. What a nice young kid. Great arm, great speed, great power, and a good defensive player. But Durocher saw him as the next Willie Mays.
Did he really?
And kept talking to him that, don't play if you're hurt, or don't do this, or don't do that. And God almighty, I think he ruined the kid.
Unbelievable. So, what's amazing here, and I want to remind our audience, Johnny Edwards is with us. Now, a little bit of your career statistics here. You voted three National League All-Star teams, 63, 64, 65. You led the National League catchers in fielding percentage 4 times, 63, 69, 70, and 71. And you also led the league 4 times in assists and 3 times in putouts. In 69, as I mentioned, Edwards, you set a single season record for catchers with 1,135 putouts and 1,221 total chances. So, I mean, during the early 60s, I would say, arguably, you were probably the best defensive catcher in the National League.
Yeah, I think my record was pretty good during those years. We had, at Cincinnati, we had the not overpowering pitchers, but we ended up striking a lot of people out and getting them out. With O'Toole and Perky and Joey J and Jim Maloney and those guys.
Yeah. Now, did you feel that you had any competition? There was so many great ball players at that time. You were right there, Johnny. Any competition? Anyone you had? You didn't get along with during your playing years that you really had friction with?
No, I got along with just about everybody.
Right. And then 74, your last season. You lasted 14 years in the big leagues. What did you do after you retired?
I got my engineering degree from Ohio State University, and I went to work. I was working during the season using my degree. When I graduated in '63, I went to work for General Electric in the nuclear field, and they're in Cincinnati. And then when I came to Houston, I went to work in the oil services business, and I worked there during the off season. I'd play baseball, and then I'd work for them for 3 or 4 months, and I was able to transition out of baseball in '74 into industry, and thank God I did. I sure didn't make a whole lot of money in baseball.
Now, did the thought ever cross your mind at that time when you retired that you wanted to get involved maybe in coaching in the major leagues? Was it difficult to do that at that time?
I didn't want to be away from my family and my kids anymore. So I had a career ahead of me, and so I was offered a couple jobs in the minor leagues, and I didn't pursue that.
And Johnny, another great achievement, you were inducted into the Ohio State Varsity Hall of Fame September 2008. Another honor that you can say about Johnny Edwards. That must have been a thrill.
That was a thrill. And one of the other ones, Brian, that I really enjoyed was, we had, at the time I was playing, we had a guy that was looking out for us by the name of Judge Cannon. But he wasn't really working for the players. And so Robin Roberts and Jim Bunning went out to solicit somebody else, and of course they came up with Marvin Miller. Mm-hmm. I was a National League player rep at that time, and Jim Allison was the American League player rep. Both of us got really threatened by the commissioner and Warren Giles in the National League, and trying to think of the American League thing. Allison resigned, but I wouldn't. I told him I wasn't going to resign, and so we went ahead, and Bob Rogers took over for Allison, and we signed the contract with Marvin Miller, not knowing where we were going to get our money to pay him, but it worked out fine.
So the commissioner actually threatened you at that time?
Both us and myself and Allison. They said we were making a mistake. We didn't want to do that. We wanted to keep it like it was. And Allison resigned.
Johnny, was this like a life threat, or was it was just word?
No, it wasn't a life threat. It was a threat, that I might ruin my career after baseball.
Okay. So then you got together, and you were like the head of the National League Players Association?
Yes, I was. Every team had a player rep, and then we always voted for one that's in charge of the entire league, and I was the National League player rep. Primarily, I think because I got a degree in engineering or something. I don't know why, but I was voted that.
Unbelievable. I have like 2 minutes left, Johnny. One thing about you, Johnny, you've always been very generous with your signatures and your autographs. And, I'm just wondering, you must still get a lot of, autograph requests. The hobby is so big. Is that still a fact in your life? You still getting a lot of autograph requests?
I still get, I've retired 50 years ago, and I still get between 10 and 20 a week. There
Wow.
must be magazines that that send, tell who'll sign autographs for nothing, and I get quite a few requests every day, and I sign them and send them back in. I'd send a couple pictures with it.
That's what I mean. You've always been generous with your signatures, from what I hear. Now, my final question: the first time you saw yourself pictured on a baseball card, were you excited? Do you remember that day?
I was excited when I went to the big leagues. That was what was excited me.
when you got your first paycheck, right?
Right. It wasn't much of a paycheck, but it was when I started playing in the big leagues, the minimum salary was $7,000 a year.
Oh my gosh!
So we went to the World Series. I got a bonus of $8,000. I thought I was a rich man.
and now I want to ask you quickly, Mickey Mantle. Did you ever meet Mickey Mantle?
Did I ever what?
Mickey Mantle. Have you ever met Mickey Mantle personally?
Oh yeah. Well, we played him in the World Series.
What was his weakness?
You had to move the ball around on him. He was a good high ball hitter, and you had to keep it down low, and you had to get him off the plate every once in a while.
Wow. But listen, I really appreciate your time. It was really great to have you on.
Okay. Thank you, Brian.
My pleasure. Johnny Edwards of the 1961 to 67 Cincinnati Reds. Until next week, happy collecting to all.